WrestleMania 39 was largely very good, and if a certain something had happened, we'd probably be looking at it as a top 5 of all-time WrestleMania, but everyone's a little bit peeved right now, and let's try and work out why that is. I'm Adam from WrestleTalk, and here are WWE's 10 biggest mistakes at WrestleMania 39. Number 1, Cody Rhodes losing. Despite the stage being set deliciously for Cody Rhodes to finish his story in the main event of WrestleMania, WWE somehow did the unthinkable and fed us yet another helping of that screwy Roman finish pie that we've all had more than our fill of, regardless of whether Cody goes on to finish his story later down the road. A lot of fans believe this was the time. For the record, I do still believe that once Cody has conquered Brock, he will get to the mountaintop. He's too good not to. But will it be as effective? Will the crowd care as much? It remains to be seen. It's not definitely a no. We've all loved the Bloodline saga, but this felt like the right time to end it all. By dragging things out, you risk alienating people, especially in the already tough period post-Mania, where interest in the product naturally falls anyway. I just hope that WWE won't let us suffer through another calendar year of an absentee double champion to get to a place we could have easily more effectively gotten to on Sunday. Let's take some deep breaths and get on with our next entry. Number 2, Shane McMahon's return. Oh, would you look at that? Speaking of deep, ragged, gasping breath, Shane McMahon made his shock return at WrestleMania and got merely a torn quad for his trouble. What is it with McMahon's and torn quads? The whole segment was the kind of disastrous TV that you just can't look away from. It truly was tragic and a bit funny, but mostly sad. Poor Shane, if we're honest. Thankfully, Snoop Dogg, with the guidance of referee Jessica Carr, saved the whole thing from disaster, landing a pair of right hands that looked far and away more convincing than Shane's bop, bop, bop punches ever could. All in all, a terrible call on WWE's part to put Shane out there over some of their other talent. LA Knight? Anyone? Well, I guess you could always run it back for that Miz vs. Shane trilogy match at next year's WrestleMania. Number 3, Asuka losing. While much of the focus will rightly be on Cody's defeat at WrestleMania, spare a thought for the Empress of Tomorrow, Asuka, who went into Sunday with an 0-4 record at WrestleMania. While many tipped her to finally get that W on her 5th attempt, it was not to be, and while Bianca winning is nowhere near as egregious as Roman, it unfortunately doesn't get me overly jazzed either. Don't get me wrong, the EST is phenomenal, but in terms of character development, can anyone say she's in a different place now as she was at the beginning of her reign? No, and while she doesn't necessarily need to turn heel, I do feel like she needs something, some kind of real adversity or personal hardship, just anything to keep people in her corner. While thankfully fans haven't turned on her quite yet, it's not out of the realm of possibility to happen if she continues mowing down challenger after challenger in 2023. Number 4, putting Sami and Kevin in Night 2's main event because their run-in didn't work. And because their run-in didn't work and Roman still won via his silly bloodline business, it makes the last image of KO and Zayn at WrestleMania 39 them doing an ineffectual thing. They done goofed, gang, and it's a small optic quibble, but it's still really annoying. See, if Cody had won, then it would have been okay. A thematic tying off of all the loose ends that have surrounded the bloodline since Sami's story began. Kevin and Sami might not have won the top belt themselves, but by running off the Usos and hitting Roman with their finishers, they would have each contributed towards felling the final boss, and it would have been their tacit endorsement of Cody as champion. Instead, Roman won, Sami and Kevin's help was for naught, and it slightly, only slightly, diminishes their big victory from the night before. Number 5, Titus O'Neil's commentary. Oorah, oorah, oorah. Oh brother, that IC triple threat was so goddamn good. It truly was as great as we all knew it would be, yet there was one thing that wasn't quite right, that being the bizarre decision to have WWE's global ambassador Titus O'Neil on commentary for this of all matches. You know what was even stranger? It wasn't actually the only match that Titus was on that weekend. On night 1, Titus would also provide play-by-play for the Showcase 4-Way men's tag match, which makes a lot more sense to use it as a showcase for new broadcast talent. The match doesn't mean anything, but yeah, have Titus there, that's fine. But there's no reason for him to be commenting on the IC title match, distracting by cutting to him constantly, especially when you got Wade Barrett sitting on the sidelines, a European brawler, like all 3 competitors in the match were European brawlers. Number 6, Edge winning. Look, the Hell in a Cell match, it was fine. It was a little silly with its color-coded weapons, even more silly with its referral to Edge as Brood Edge, which is a completely normal and natural way of describing that gimmick. While that was innocent enough, the ultimate decision to hand Edge the decisive victory over Finn, I feel like that was the wrong call. Edge's legacy is established to the point where he really didn't need the W, whereas Finn really could have used it, especially if you wanted to protect the demon of all things after what happened to the gimmick at Extreme Rules 2021. Never forget the floppy salmon. Despite being in WWE for almost a decade, Finn still somehow feels like he needs building up, especially if he's ever going to get a sniff of the main event again. Unfortunately, that feels feels further away than ever following WrestleMania. Number 7, Austin Theory versus John Cena. Despite being a match that many have clamored for since Theory's ascent in WWE began, Night 1's opener ultimately fell flat and ultimately didn't do the 25-year-old or John Cena any favors. And to be honest, the reason for that kind of lies with Cena himself. He just didn't seem that interested in the whole thing. The match was plodding, unexciting, with very little storytelling to build off that one promo segment they had to set the scene for the feud. And the nature of the victory, the old reliable ref bump finish and the thing to the cock, it really does Theory no favors in solidifying his status as the now of WWE. Even worse, all those psychological mind games Cena was playing with Theory about being eaten alive on the Raw after Mania ended up leading to absolutely no character development either. None of this is terrible, it's just felt like a bit of a waste. Number 8, Bobby Lashley not having a match. It's hard not to feel bad for the Almighty. He had another stellar year in 2022, playing a massive role in filling the Roman-shaped void on Monday Night Raw with his US title reign and feuds with the like of Austin Theory, Seth Rollins, and Brock Lesnar, only to be left off the grandest stage of them all in the end. But this is, of course, not what WWE intended, with Bobby clearly heading towards a match with Bray Wyatt and/or Uncle Howdy in Hollywood prior to that collapsing. However, this is no excuse for not finding Bobby something to do at WrestleMania, and no coming out on stage to pose with his Andre trophy for 45 seconds doesn't count. On a weekend where The Miz had technically 3 matches, how in the blue hell do you not find time for a former WWE champion like Lashley? You could have just made the Almost Lesnar match a triple threat. Would anyone have cared? Would any one single person have minded? Number 9, Pat McAfee's match. Speaking of an opportunity that could have fallen to a Lashley or, once again, an LA Knight, the appearance of Pat McAfee, while always appreciated, just wasn't necessarily needed this time around. Pat definitely has a lot to contribute either on commentary or in the ring, but something just didn't feel great about this. You already had the Pat surprise at the Rumble after all. For NFL fans, I'm sure the interjection from George Kittle was also appreciated. I don't know who he is, but he seems fine and served as a fitting WrestleMania celebrity crossover moment, but even that could have probably happened without a match, especially a match while people were anxiously awaiting the main event and just shouting at the screen, "Just get to Sammy already!" And number 10, all the sponsorship. Fuck me. Back at January's Royal Rumble, WWE held its first ever Mountain Dew Pitch Black match between Bray Wyatt and LA Knight, and it was terrible and Bray's never recovered. However, while the Mountain Dew match definitely didn't fit tonally with the feud it was placed into, it was a slightly better fit than Cinnamon Toast Crunch was into the familial blood feud between Ray and his son Dominic. Like, what the... Cinnamon Toast... Elsewhere, you had Mike Harder's Lemonade sponsor the hard-hitting Gunther versus Sheamus versus Drew match with an ad sporting 2 of the 3 competitors, Drew and Sheamus, sharing a beverage. And then not just one, but both main events of WrestleMania were preceded by a sponsorship for TurboTax. The Prime bottle was in attendance, lest we forget, and all the constant cutting to adverts mid-broadcast. Feels great paying for a subscription service crammed with adverts, guys. WWE Senior Vice President and Head of Global Sales and Partnerships, Craig Stimmel, stated that the goal with the brand integration into WWE's matches was to try and find the perfect marriage of brand and story. What we saw at WrestleMania was an indicator of this perfect marriage, then please grant me a swift divorce. And that's our list. What do you think was the biggest mistake made at WrestleMania 39? Well, let's be honest, the second biggest mistake made at WrestleMania 39. Also, check out last time we did one of these lists, where it was Lil Pete doing 10 shocks Triple H can book on the Raw after Mania. You can give that a watch right now.
Yeah. So take that, Adam. Anyway, here's 10 shocks that Triple H could book for the Raw after WrestleMania.